Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 6:06 here on this Tuesday morning in the nation's capital. Thanks for joining us on O'Connor and Company. Coming up at 6:35, Reagan Reese, Daily Caller News Foundation. She's got that story about the It Gets Better project funding gender transition closets. At 7:05, Mark Morano from Climate Depot. 7:35, Jeremy Wayne Tate. He's the co-founder of the Classic Learning Test. He'll talk to us about Florida's move in the classical education direction. And then at 8:05, Avi Loeb, professor of science at Harvard University. And 8:35, Nick Minnock, covering all things Loudoun County lately, with some updates on the scandals surrounding the members of the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors. That's all coming up. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Patrice Onwuka.
Yeah, happy Tuesday.
You know, it is a happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, and I'm happy. I'm happy that we didn't get washed away last night with all the rain.
Right?
Although we still do have some road closures in the district that's going to wreak havoc on your commute, so keep it here. Jamie Whitten will give you the next update coming up at 6:15. Meanwhile, the scandals continue to swirl around the Biden administration. Joe Biden himself, most of it, of course, revolving around the business actions of his son, who Joe Biden, it appears, was certainly participating with in these business transactions, along with his brother. The latest now has another longtime business partner of Hunter Biden, Eric Schwerin. This according to reporting from Cameron Cawthorn and Jessica Chasmar. This guy, who was, again, a business partner of Hunter Biden, all during the Obama administration. And we know what business Hunter Biden was in. Hunter Biden was in the business of selling access, the brand, his name, right? He visited the Obama White House and the vice president's residence at least 36 times.
Oh, my goodness.
That's I mean, how many times did you visit the Obama White House or the vice president's
Let me
residence?
count. 0.
Yeah. Yes, and the point is, not a lot of people get access to the White House.
No. I mean,
Not
I
a
was
lot of
able
people-
to go during the Trump administration. I went a handful of times, but 36 times? Come on now.
I went a handful of times during the Trump administration too, but it was I can tell you exactly what the business was. I was there to conduct interviews and report and such, not like this. Hunter Biden's former friend and longtime business, I love it's former friend, visited the Obama White House and then Vice President Joe Biden's residence dozens of times between 2009 and 2016, likely to make him the next target of the House Oversight Committee's investigation. This all reported by Fox News Digital. He visited the White House and Vice President's residence at the observatory at least 27 times during Joe Biden's vice presidency. But now, after a more extensive review, that reporting has upped that number to 36. Meanwhile, Representative Comer, the chairman of the Oversight Committee, says that more bank records are going to be released in that investigation this week. So the questions continue. More evidence is being put forth, and the case is being made meticulously. The media, the mainstream media and legacy media, the corporate media, they continue to ignore this story. And again, I hate being in this place where I'm complaining about the bias in the media and the bad job that journalists are doing for two reasons. First of all, I don't want to complain about it because it helps. The more often they neglect their job to inform the American people, it actually builds our audience. People are smart enough to know yes, they're going to go where they know the news is actually being reported. But what is more disconcerting, frankly, is when there is an impeachment of Joe Biden, when there is an impeachment of Merrick Garland, the people who do rely on CNN or MSNBC or Good Morning America or the Today Show, the people who do rely on them for their news and information, they're going to be shocked. They're not going to know anything. They're not going to know anything that led up to the impeachment. And so they will believe, oh, well, this is just politics. There's nothing really there. And it's like, no, there's a hell of a lot there.
They'll believe there's no track record. Nothing was covered.
But the shows they rely on aren't informing them.
Well, and if anything comes up, they just call it more Republican political theater. You know, What's interesting with this first story, though, about the number of visits that that Hunter Biden's former colleague made, is that the 36 visits could actually be understated. It doesn't include a lot of the personal visits that he made. And according to more reporting here, he was there during holidays, hobnobbing at different events. Mm-hmm. He benefited by being appointed to one of Obama's commissions in 2017. So you can see here that if you were a friend of the Bidens from a professional standpoint and you became a friend on the personal standpoint, then you suddenly become a friend of the Obama administration from a policy standpoint. And I think that underscores just how much, and then obviously they're working with foreign governments. So it underscores just how much this administration really peddled under Hunter Biden and his dad, peddled the influence that they had. But also it's starting to pull Obama in. And so far, President Obama has been able to duck any sort of connection or any sort of knowledge about what's going on. Maybe he actually didn't know what was going on with his second in command. Yeah.
Well, and let's be clear here. As of now, Joe Biden has spent nearly half of his presidency at his residence in Delaware at Rehoboth, and there are no visitors logs there.
Yes,
so he's there pretty much half of his time. He's there in Delaware instead of at the White House, and anyone can visit. Who knows how many people have visited, and we will never know.
Where is the transparency that was promised to the American people?
Oh, they're pretty transparent, all right. Meanwhile, there's this from the Washington Times, Jeff Murdoch reporting. An ex-FBI official named Charles McGonigal is set to plead guilty, or he is set to plead guilty to charges of colluding with Russia, according to a federal judge yesterday. Now, this is an FBI official who worked on the fake, phony, trumped-up, made-up Trump-Russia collusion investigation. This was an official who actually participated in investigating Donald Trump for Russian collusion, and he is now set to plead guilty to illegally colluding with Russia.
So he was literally part of the team to deflect what he was doing and reflect that onto President Trump, who was innocent of that.
Well, apparently his illegal colluding with Russia actually came after the investigation.
Okay.
See, Mr. McGonigal made at least $25,000 as an investigator for the law firm directly working for Mr. Oleg Deripaska. He received an additional payment of $51,000, then payments of $41,790 each month for 3 months from August 2021 to November 2021. Oleg Deripaska was one of the central figures of the Russian collusion hoax. And this former FBI agent made money from it.
So I stand by my point. Is it possible? I mean, we understand that while the probe was going on, he was part of that investigation, but could he have been, maybe he had hands in the cookie jar well before that?
Could have been. Absolutely could have been.
We don't know yet.
Yes. But it fits in the pattern. Everything they accuse us of doing, they are actually doing. And I'm told that I love the fact that somebody from the FBI is finally actually seeing some justice with regard to the Russian collusion probe. But it's not because they had fake charges and violated the civil rights of innocent American citizens with their fake and phony investigation. No, it's because this guy in the middle of it decided, hey, this would be a good idea. Maybe I'll do it too.
That's really brazen, though. That is really brazen because you absolutely believe you're going to get away scot-free with this.
Yeah. It's 6:15 now, WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes, first on the 5s. Jamie Witten's in the Hadid Carpet.
Miss anything? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Get today's breaking news on the Vince Colonnese Show, weekdays 3 to 6, right here on WMAL.
Now, this is a perfect example of NBC News Today Show's audience, or NBC News across the board, really, being uninformed. This is, and again, this goes well beyond bias. This is just malpractice. It's journalistic malpractice. It's negligence Dasha Burns is interviewing Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida and candidate for president, specifically about the abortion issue. And DeSantis makes the valid point. It's like, listen, you may call us, extreme because we have a heartbeat bill and we want to put a limit on when a baby can be killed. But Democrats, if they had their way, they'd make abortion legal right up to the moment of birth. They've already done it in certain states. Yeah. And by the way, let's not forget, in Virginia, they wanted to do that. We know that. We remember Kathy Tran doing that. Yeah. They've done it in New York. They've done it in California. I think that's the law in Maryland as we speak. So listen to this exchange with NBC's interviewer, the journalist Dasha Burns.
A chief concern, the 6-week abortion ban DeSantis signed in Florida. It's an issue Democrats have worked to use against him and other Republicans on the campaign trail. The governor has implied the issue should be left to individual states. So would you veto any sort of federal bill that tries to put a nationwide ban in place?
So we will be a pro-life president, and we will support pro-life policies. I would not allow what a lot of the left wants to do, which is to override pro-life protections throughout the country, all the way up really until the moment of birth in some instances, which I think is infanticide.
Well, actually, I got to push back on you on that because that's a misrepresentation of what's happening. I mean, that 1.3% of abortions happen at 21 weeks or higher.
Which, by the way, is a stupid talking point, because what do you mean push? First of all, you ever notice whenever a reporter says, I got to push back on you, it's always a Republican they're pushing back on.
Yeah, usually it's not a Democrat that they're holding to the mat.
No, what have you ever seen a reporter say to Joe Biden, I got to push back on that? It never happens.
Steve Ducey. Unless Steve Ducey.
Yeah. Exactly. But number two, she says, first of all, I have to push back on you because it's very rare, only 1.3%. First of all, 1.3, that's thousands of babies. That's, so she's conceding by pointing out this 1.3%, which clearly she had in her notes. So her producer said, hey, if he claims that Democrats want abortion up, be prepared with this. But then she went on to say,
there's no evidence of Democrats pushing for
but their
abortions
view
up
is,
until...
Their view is that all the way up into that, yet there should not be any legal protections.
There is no indication of Democrats pushing for that.
Well, yes.
There's no indication of Democrats pushing for that. Okay,
really?
I've already told you, California passed it. New York, Governor Cuomo celebrated. They painted the Capitol in Albany pink the day that they signed the bill into law. It's the law in several Democrat-run states, but you don't even have to go that far. Literally every Democrat except for one in the House of Representatives attempted to pass a bill that said exactly this, that abortion should be legal up until the moment of birth for the entire pregnancy. This woman is incredibly uninformed. She's either stupid or she's lying. It's one of the two. But the fact that her producers actually put this on, allowed this to be broadcast, making their own employee look so stupid and ill-informed, tells you something. I'm thinking the network agrees with this.
It could be payback. If you remember, her name sounds familiar because during the Pennsylvania Senate campaign, she interviewed John Fetterman, and she was the reporter, the NBC reporter, who said, this guy, he has serious cognitive problems. He can't even communicate with me. And she had received a lot of backlash from the left because obviously he was their golden boy in their 50-plus ticket in the Senate. So, whether her producers, whether her higher-ups were just getting back at her, obviously she's trying to toe the company line, and the egg is on her face because obviously people know that Democrats absolutely are fine with abortion beyond what most Americans agree it should be, the limit should be. They're more than happy to see what Governor DeSantis, who oddly calls himself we as president, but he will
be a pro-life presidency. It's the royal we.
It's the rolly.
Yeah, I suggest Dasha Burns, before she interviews another politician, or really before she engages in any kind of political or policy-based conversation about this or other issues, maybe she should read a newspaper. Or maybe listen to this program. And following the U.S. women's team humiliating defeat and elimination from the Women's World Cup this weekend, yesterday was a day for progressives, liberals, leftists to virtue signal about how proud they were of the team for underperforming. Hillary Clinton took to Twitter, "I'm forever proud of our U.S. women's national team. This team will come back better and stronger because that's what American women do." Of course, the question is, what does she mean when she says woman?
That's a good question. Ask Megan Rapinoe. Now, listen, I'm going to say that it's unfair to target Rapinoe only. The whole team, as you rightly said, underperformed. We've been actually watching highlights of all of the women's women's soccer games in the World Cup. And, yeah, the Americans just didn't bring the sauce this year.
Yeah, and I think it's completely fair to blame her. She poisoned the team. Took their eyes off the ball, as it were. 6:29.
Now on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 6:37 now on this very busy Tuesday morning in your nation's capital. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're drying out from the rain. Should be a beautiful day today. Coming up at 7:05, Mark Morano, Climate Depot, will join us. 7:35, Jeremy Wayne Tate. He's the co-founder and CEO of Classic Learning Test on classical education now being instituted in Florida's curriculum. 8:05, Avi Loeb, professor of science at Harvard University, about about welcoming our new alien overlords. And then at 8:35, Nick Minnock, who's doing some yeoman's work reporting on all the scandals out of Loudoun County. He, of course, from WJLA. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Patrice Onwuka.
Good morning, Larry.
Good morning,
I know it's
Patrice.
not Friday, but it's Tuesday, folks.
It's a little odd to have you here.
I'm just here for
our friend Julie's on vacation. Julie Gunlight's on vacation. Patrice is here.
Well-deserved vacations.
And joining us now is Reagan Reese, reporter for Daily Caller News Foundation. I got to meet Reagan at an event for Hillsdale College down in D.C. at their School for Government, and it was great to meet her. And I'm happy to have you on the program, Reagan. Good to meet you.
Hey, thanks for having me so much.
You're very welcome. I was very interested in this article that you wrote at Daily Caller News Foundation about the It Gets Better project. People forget about this. This was all the craze during the Obama administration, and Barack and Michelle Obama did, videos that went viral, just trying to tell kids that if they're getting bullied in school, don't worry, it gets better. And of course, if you rolled your eyes and you said it was virtue signaling and all that stuff, is like, oh, you're pro-bully, you're pro-bully. Well, no, it's just we don't need the president and the federal government to get involved in something that's clearly meant for local school systems to deal with. That said, you've now discovered exactly what this It Gets Better project was doing with our money. Tell us about this report.
Yeah, so like you said, it became a more prominent thing during the Obama administration. It hasn't gone away. Last year, they gave 50 grants to schools across the country in the United States. This year, it's actually increased. It's now 56 schools in the U.S. and 15 Canadian public and charter schools, which they've given $10,000 each to, for a total of $625,000 in grants to fund LGBTQ initiatives, such as, pushing these gender transition closets. And one school in California is even going to partner with the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence.
This is ridiculous. I'm just on their website actually going through some of the other projects that they funded. And as you said, it's going back to at least 2014 during the heart of the Obama administration. Talk to us about the taxpayer side. Like, how much of our tax dollars actually went into this organization? Because, hey, nonprofits will do ridiculous stuff when they're privately funded. But my concern is our tax dollars going toward the indoctrination of kids with this LGBTQ agenda.
That's a really good question, a really interesting question that I plan as a journalist to look into more. But this particular project with the It Gets Better project said it's actually funded by two prominent clothing brands for young women especially, which is Abercrombie and Aerie. Or American Eagle, sorry, and Aerie. And so not exactly sure how what that looks like and how they're getting the money from those brands. But, we all know how you get how companies raise money off of our dollar when we go and shop there. So that's where this project was funded from specifically.
So this is, and again, even if there aren't direct tax dollars, this is promoted, celebrated, and pushed by the administration and the Obama administration, certainly. And again, I don't want anyone to misconstrue. We're not pro-bullying. We don't think kids should be bullied, okay? We also realize that kids do get bullied. And part of coping with and developing some kind of personal strength is pushing back on and learning to ignore bullies as well. So this whole It Gets Better program, frankly, I think was misguided left-wing claptrap in the first place. But now, Reagan Reese, to learn that these people are taking this money and really behind parents' backs helping develop children into gender transitioners, that's outrageous. And nobody knows this. Nobody knows that that's what's really going on behind the scenes with this organization.
Yeah, not many of these projects are going to anti-bullying campaigns. They're going to, like you mentioned, funding these gender transitioning closets, which, we only have the information that the schools provided, the It Gets Better project, about what the grant money was going to go to. So when they list gender transition closets, I've done previous reporting on this. And these are kind of closets at school where there are an array of different items. And it can range anywhere from, dresses and shorts and jewelry and makeup to chest binders and silicone looking items that, kids can use to kind of give them the appearance that they have other genitalia.
Yeah,
so
and let's be clear. There's the only reason for
items.
a gender closet at a school is you're keeping your parents in the dark. You're doing this when you get to school because you're not leaving home like that.
Yeah, that's a trend we're seeing across the United States as well, where schools have these policies where they're kind of helping these kids hide their gender transitions from their parents, and that the norm is making sure that administrators don't out the students, I put that in quotations, to their parents.
Just really quickly, is there any evidence that part of their this It Gets Better project is any sort of mental health or emotional health resources to these kids? Because that seems to be a huge missing factor if all they're doing is normalizing transgender and all the other gender transitioning that's going on in these schools.
There is one school in Phoenix, Arizona. It doesn't give the exact school that will be using the money to train their staff in LGBTQ issues, including Suicide Awareness Month. That could look like an array of different things. That could be mental health issues. It's hard to say when they don't give many examples of what that training could look like. Perhaps it is something where they are preparing them for a different situations.
All right. We got to leave it there. Reagan Reese, thanks for joining us. We got a little delay on the line, so I want to just wrap it up there. But I appreciate your reporting, and I appreciate you staying on this case. Let us know if you learn any developments. Reagan Reese, Daily Caller News Foundation. Thank you. Hey, if dental care is weighing heavy on your mind for longer than you care to admit, listen to me, please, because I have answers. I've got Dr. Rob and Dr. Deb at Bethesda Sedation Dentistry. Listen, I know how you feel. I hate going to the dentist. Always have. For years I hated, but then I found out about Bethesda Sedation Dentistry. Now they take care of my dental needs because they're compassionate, they're non-judgmental, and, oh, by the way, they're great dentists, especially for people who've been away from the dentist for years. Everything's permission-based. They progress at your speed that you're comfortable with. You don't feel like you're on some conveyor belt just chugging as many patients in as they can. And by the way, if you need complete sedation, they're experts at that. Do what I did. Put your trust in Bethesda Sedation Dentistry. Take care of your nagging tooth pain. Enjoy the foods you love again on both sides of your mouth. Imagine that. Call 301-530-2434. 301-530-2434. BethesdaSedationDentistry.com. 645, now WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes first on the fives. Here's Jamie Whitten in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
Traffic is brought to you by Jiffy Lube.
A lot going on this.
I'm still so annoyed at that last story, Patrice. And we're missing the fact that our ladies are perpetual indulgence. That's the drag queen,
Yes.
anti-Catholic, mocking
Who
nuns.
mock, absolutely.
The blasphemous, horrible mock Christianity. Any public school out there that's taking money, grants from this group, this It Gets Better group, to combat bullying, they're taking money from a group that is supporting anti-Catholic, anti-Christian bias. It's gross.
They would never take money from an anti-Muslim, anti-Hindu group either, who mocks those religions. It's just the Christians, just the Catholics, yeah.
Yesterday there was a hearing on the disastrous pullout of Afghanistan, the Biden administration's horrific.
It's been 2 years, right, Larry? 2 years.
And it's way overdue. I want you to listen to Cheryl Rex. This is the mother of Lance Corporal Dylan Marola, who is no longer with us, who died in combat, killed in action, thanks to the Biden administration's horrific lack of planning and lack of strategy and lack of any forethought in their pullout. Dylan, died in that. He died in that terrible bombing. And listen to what his mother had to go through.
When Joe Biden, our elected president, entered the room, when he approached me, his words to me were, my wife Jill and I know how you feel. We lost our son as well and brought him home in a flag-draped coffin. My heart started beating faster, and I started shaking, knowing that their son died from cancer and they were able to be by his side. Also wondering how someone could honestly, be so heartless to say he knew how I felt a little over 24 hours and learning of my son's death. After this encounter, I have never had any personal correspondence, nor has my son been honored or his name spoken by this commander-in-chief or his administration on what I feel is because of their failures and poor planning to exit our troops from Afghanistan.
It's disgusting. It's he says it all the time that his son died in Iraq. His son served in Iraq. His son died of cancer. Now, some will say that he contracted cancer because he was exposed to burn pits in Iraq, although that's still inconclusive. But even if you want to say that his premature death, we're talking about Beau Biden here, the former Attorney General of Delaware, if you want to say that his death was brought on prematurely because of his service in Iraq, that's one thing.
Sure.
But he doesn't say that. He says he died in Iraq. And here, to this mother grieving her son who just died because of his decisions, he says, we brought his body back in a flag-draped casket. It's just an outright despicable lie. It's stolen honor is what it is.
Well, I'm focused on the fact that he makes it about him. President Biden makes it about his pain, about his trauma, about his past and his experience. When in that moment, having her son having just died, what she said 24 hours prior, like that, the grief is blinding her. The last thing she needs is somebody else to make it about himself. But even more, she says that the administration has yet to honor her son, yet to utter his name. And that's because they don't want to draw attention to what caused his death. And that's just, it's disgusting.
They want him to just disappear. They don't want anyone to talk about it. Nobody's been fired. Nobody's been reprimanded for the terrible decisions that came about when we pulled out of Afghanistan so recklessly. Cheryl Rex, all I can tell you is that we appreciate your son's sacrifice. We appreciate your sacrifice. And I assure you, when we get our next commander-in-chief, this will be rectified. And you will be honored, and he will be honored. It is 6. We've got more from this testimony yesterday, and we will be playing it later this morning. It's 6:52.